All right, well, welcome everybody to the Dallas podcast. My name is Tony Armour. I am the Dallas Film Commissioner.
My name is Andrew. I am the project specialist for the Dallas Film Commission, and we actually have our official name, Dallas Film Podcast now.
Yes, we do. And we're really excited today because we have a wonderful guest with us here in Dallas, Donald Mowat. And Donald is an Oscar-nominated hair and makeup designer, has worked on many films over the years, from Skyfall to Prisoners, of which we're doing screenings of both of those films in Dallas while Donald is here. And Donald's going to be speaking with some students at Dallas College, University of North Texas. So, Donald, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Donald. Why don't we start with Donald? Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got started.
I guess it's a long journey, I guess, for everybody in the business. Probably to everybody listening, all of our journeys are to us are very important and probably very dramatic. Mm-hmm. As when you're young, starting, I was maybe a teenager, being very complicated as we are as teenagers to our poor families, being not the best student, but loving all things to do with movies and films and theater. And I think my parents must have been very frustrated, like, what is this kid going to become? He loves going to movies and cutting school and going to repertory cinemas and, but he can't do math or anything else. But I did love film, so I think that when I realized you could make a living, or I saw that, I was very fascinated with the costumes. And when I started seeing people's names attached to films, as kids were cutting school in, 5th or 6th grade to see Grease, I cut school to see Barry Lyndon. And that was I was fascinated by the way they looked and the way the film looked. And that's when I started to notice credits on films. And so in school, I was really in all the theater groups, and it's kind of typical. I think a lot of people who do what I do or work in film in general, whether they're doing makeup or costume or cinematography, will talk about the early days of what interested them, or drawing. So that's how I really started. And it was a real interest. And I ended up thinking costume or makeup was really the area I was interested in. And of course, being a boy and makeup was very contrary to what the society I was growing up in was not really favored, I think, until we saw that all the names of the people doing the makeup were all men. And that sort of made people think, well, it's not so bad. So there's a really great sexism and a great misunderstanding, because I had nobody in my family in show business. So they didn't understand when you see makeup in movies, whether it was prosthetics or makeup effects. Makeup was makeup. That's something girls wear and do. It was highly misunderstood. And I think that was a very difficult thing.
Yeah, and so did you start in theater then? And started in theater in high school?
Sure, yeah, kind of 9th grade, 10th grade, Mr. Turnbull, crabby, very temperamental. But he was a very good teacher, and I think that he put up with me, and I think I was an eccentric kid to begin with, and he was a very eccentric teacher. And there we were doing things like aging, why they make kids do plays by Neil Simon in high school, because it's always about people in their 50s and 60s. And you're 12 and 13 and 14. So suddenly taking somebody's mother's Avon kit and trying to age people, and getting Richard Corson's book on makeup and figuring out how to age people. And then you learn and you meet people, and suddenly you're meeting a wonderful woman called Beryl. I think it was Beryl Lowe, who did makeup. She trained as an actress, I believe, in the UK, and talking about Gilbert and Sullivan, and come along to an operatic society where I grew up in Montreal and learned to do some stage makeup, and it was incredible and far more interesting than high school. So,
well, and maybe that's where it's, you talk about having high school age kids who are playing 50 or 60-year-olds, and maybe that's actually a good thing, because it does, as a high school kid, and you're starting to do that makeup, you're trying to age people, you have to start right away with that.
Sure.
And so you start your practice essentially right off the bat, trying to work in that type of makeup, as opposed to what you would call like just beauty makeup or whatever.
It's funny you say that. I never thought of it that way, but I guess that was always the challenge, is you see things that seem impossible. And of course, at the time, it's preposterous, really, what we were doing. But now looking back, they were challenges. So of course, I ended up being asked to work on a production of I think it was called Dark of the Moon, and it was aging, but I still have photographs someone took for me, and the attempts were pretty decent, and based on Richard Corson's book, which is a very good book a lot of theater students use for makeup reference and costume and things, that I still have, and I think it helped me tremendously when I started working more professionally. And I met a lot of by the time sort of college level, I was working with photographers who said, hey, can you work and do portfolios with young actors, because the makeups are wrong. There's too much makeup on. And so then I started doing more beauty makeup and straight makeup, as they call it, which is a strange term.
Well, and so I think, that's a question that, again, something I think people even today don't understand. When you talk about makeup for an actor in film and television, people still just think, oh, you're just making them look nicer. You're making them look better so that they look good on camera. When in reality, the makeup that you're doing is really about the character and how it fits the story. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of your approach to doing makeup, what it's not, and we'll keep using this term beauty makeup, just to make people look better, but to really enhance the story?
Well, I think, everybody working on a film, if from the costume designer, makeup, hair, cinematographer, everyone is telling a story or part of telling ultimately a story and contributing to this and working towards the final product, and with the director and writer, that you're putting a piece of the puzzle. And there's somehow people equate makeup as always being, like you said, it's beauty or making people look better, but it's making people look right, correct for the part or the period or the time frame or the era, and how it works with the lighting and what the director of photography is accomplishing or trying to do. So I think that it's also undervalued. I think making people look great or fantastic or amazing is also undervalued by people who think, oh, it's just making them look good, because it's a lot harder than people know. And making people look like another person or a character or a caricature is a skill and art unto itself. So whether you're doing SCTV, the old SCTV, or Saturday Night Live, those makeups are quite something to create and apply and execute and design, and take a certain skill, because they're based on theater makeups. And then doing something the way Kazu would do a Churchill makeup, or Bradley Cooper in Maestro, or looking at the old Lon Chaney makeups, or the huge transformations, or then something you would never know as a transformation, like Tilda Swinton in Trainwreck, or Orlando, or those things which people go, that's not, it's the transformation, but you don't know it is, are kind of genius makeups. And then the less is more, so I think that there's a lot of makeups that are so subtle you don't know it, and those are, for me, the ones that are very interesting, that just help tell the story, but they're understated, and they're part of the film or the television show.
Is there when you talk about understated, is there a project you worked on or something you've seen, let's say in the last, 5 years or something like that, where you take a look at that and maybe someone else doesn't realize it and you're like, wow, that was pretty amazing?
Well, I was watching Gary Oldman in The Dracula and Francis Ford Coppola's recently on a plane. There's nothing else to watch, and I saw that and thought what a great makeup he had.
Yeah.
It was really fantastic. Or going back to see Tootsie, watching Dustin Hoffman and how clever that was for the time. And of course, every couple of years, last few years, the All Quiet on the Western Front, I just thought it was incredibly well done. And there was a lot. There's so many good makeups that are done that are not always valued for how complicated or how daring they were, or that they really went out. They did something different. And other times they're just so good you don't notice them. You know, I mean, they're on another level altogether.
Yeah. When you started transitioning from theater to larger productions or just film sets in general, what were some of like the skills that you learned that someone listening to this that wants to get into this industry in this field could pick up on or should know?
It's really difficult because I always think it takes 10 years to know what you're really doing,
Mm-hmm.
or to be able to kind of manage yourself and not listen to other people, or to kind of take your own counsel. You know, you'll work with some directors of photography that give you a lot of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
or they trust you, or a director that trusts you. And other times you may be working with people that don't have that confidence in their own work or themselves, and you're relying on them and think, well, do they know? Or an actor who's really collaborative, who will let you experiment or take the extra time, or they don't mind staying late or coming in on a day off. And there are people like that. There really are people who will go the extra mile and say, let's try this, let's try that, which I love because it's playing, and you won't know till you try, and that's the best way to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other people who aren't interested.
Yeah.
And you're just, what's the point? And they're just, it is what it is. And you'd be lost, you're wasting your time. If you're working with someone like that, then you should just accept this is the job. But I think, like anything, you know, you want to work with like-minded people, and when you find that, then it's fantastic. But it took me a little while to trust myself and feel. But it takes a long time to feel confident, and you never really know it all. And I think by the time you really learn, it takes 15, 20 years till you learn your discipline, your craft, and then think, now I know. But by the time you really that you really have your own confidence, and you're stubborn enough and confident enough to say to people, I know what I'm talking about, you're sort of a bit arrogant maybe. And then people go, God, that guy's a pain in the ass. And then people may not want to work with you. And that's kind of what I've experienced. Or you meet people and say, that person's really got an attitude. But that's really what it is. You know, you finally trust yourself enough to say, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think people starting out today don't want to hear that it's going to take them 15 or 20 years to know what they're doing. And that, maybe that's part of the problem with the industry, and we won't go on society as a whole. But there's no patience to really learn your craft or, you know, take your skills to the next level in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I love that, you know, there's many people you work with over the years who I think they will acknowledge it took them a long time to learn. And it's a great feeling when you really feel like you've learned something, and I feel comfortable that it took 10 years or 15 years. And you work on enough films. I'm very, very fortunate that I worked on feature films, motion pictures, and television, and live theater, and live television. But I came up in a time where they were making motion pictures, and I was able to make mistakes and work with great directors and some bad ones, and great actors and some not so great ones, and people who used makeup for the right reasons and not always the right reasons. So you learn, like, you know, is this a good choice, or good continuity and not so great continuity, and when the makeup should be left alone, and when you should be fussy. And I've learned when I've made a mistake or I should have made a different choice.
Yeah, and that's interesting when you talk about sort of the consistency. I think something, again, maybe people don't think about is they have to look the same every single day. Because you could be shooting for, you know, a short film shoot is 21 days. So 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, longer sometimes. And so every single day they need to look the same, or even if it's not the same because the character changes throughout the film.
That's right.
You know, and you're shooting out of order. Talk about how challenging that is to maintain that consistency of look and, you know, changing on a daily basis. Well, yesterday they were beat up, today they're not beat up, you know, how that may work.
Well, you know, it takes a long time to learn that. And we're one of the few departments that deal with that. I mean, everyone does. I mean, costume and props, everyone. But I think with us, it's really, I think, you know, what do they say? Never explain, never complain. It's part of our job. We really should do without being noticed.
Yeah.
I pride myself that script supervisors will say thank you for that. They notice that we covered it, or we didn't make a big scene about it, and I really love it when they let us do our thing and not interfere too much, that I know how to do this. But sometimes I think people forget that it's a tremendous responsibility that a lot of people don't recognize, that people do not look the same every single day. The way you wake up, the way you look at night and in the day are different. The temperature of your skin, your hair, everything about you is different. Over the course of the summer, you know, tan, not tan. It's very difficult to maintain, you know, suntans and burns and all kinds of things that happen. So if a film takes place over one night or 2 nights, you are in deep trouble. I had that happen once on a film that took place on Christmas Eve over 3 months.
Oh.
Wow.
So, you know, you really are on your toes. It might be a simple makeup. I feel for the hairdressers because sometimes that's very difficult, because doing a hair trim or the easiest thing to do is very complicated. Simple is very difficult.
Yeah.
The lipsticks, the simplest thing you'll notice.
Yeah, because you could be editing a scene together that was shot in 2 or 3 different days.
That's right.
And so from one cut to the next cut,
that's right.
If the person looks different because it was different days, you know, it's going to pull the audience out of the entire thing and be like, wait a minute.
That's right.
And they're just talking, and then the reverse shot, it looks completely different than he did a second ago. What's going on here?
And I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is a big difference that's happened, and I've never been able to explain this very articulately or eloquently in digital age. Because in the old days of film, whether it was even television or 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter, when we went into the digital world, it all changed because we didn't reload the way we did. So or cut the way we used to. Check the gate, hair in the gate, which meant many things. Sometimes it really was hair or dust in the gate. We have to reshoot. We'll do it again. Sometimes it was really hair in the gate, or there was a smudge, there was something, a problem with makeup, problem with the costume, problem with the performance, a technical glitch. Or let's just do it again. But you also could check the makeup. So sweat, blood, tears tended to match, in my opinion, better. Or I won't say better, correctly. Now, continuous rolling. So you'll do perspiration, tears, blood, whatever. And this is my opinion. Not everyone will agree. We don't cut as often. They don't allow people in to match it. Hair. And people will say, what happened there? And you go, well, because we're not cutting.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because I've been on sets before where, of course, time is always at a premium, and you're rushing through, and hair and makeup will want to come in and do something, and they're, first AD is like, no, keeping them out of the shot so you can keep rolling shot after shot after shot, not realizing that those shots are starting to change. So whatever you take one was and take 10 is, you can't use those two together.
That's right.
Because now they're looking different because you didn't allow hair and makeup to come in and touch up.
That's right. And there's I could have 2 ways to express that. Sometimes it's unnecessary. And I've been on plenty of films where the hair, makeup, and costume, I really need to bring them into this because sometimes it's unnecessary. Sometimes there is a moment where makeup should come in, or hair or costume should, and there are times they should not, and they are. And you think, what are you doing? You've got a job. As Mark Wahlberg used to say, you've got the job. And there are other times you think, But I'm like that now. Sometimes my crew will do it and go, you're fine. You don't need to be in there.
Yeah.
But there are other times they really do. And people are saying, come on, get out of there, get out of there. And I know if the sun's going down and you need it and it's poor director of photography, I get it. Pull my people out. A great first AD will recognize and say, Donald, can you please make sure unless it's necessary? I get it. It's understood. But there are other times it's incredibly disrespectful that people don't allow certain people to go in. And then there are other times a costumer will go in 20 times and adjust a button that no one's looking at in close up and think, no, that's also highly disrespectful. If we're talking all's fair, you know, in love and war. So I think there's a imbalance now in this industry, and there's been a lot more, I think, disrespect geared towards our department than there was at any given time. And I know a lot of people listening will go, he's so wrong. But I don't care, because I do think it's really not nice. And if you think about it, when you see an actor get drier and drier and drier and think, we're doing an interrogation in a war sequence or it's a torture scene and the blood was running and it looked phenomenal, and now we're dry as a bone and the blood's changed. It's all, are we cutting? Are we going to go in and pause and let the makeup artist go in? For me, it's lazy, and but that's a whole new way. Or a director has the prerogative to say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care, and that's fine, but then I don't want to work on a film like that.
Sure.
And what makes you say yes to working on a film or choosing a project? Like, is it the crew, the director, the DP on there? Like, for you, what is it that says, yes, I'll do this?
That they love making movies.
Yeah.
It's not about being friends, but people who love what they do, and there's a magic to it, and they love what they do. And it's not about people having personal chefs and oh my God, I'll get in so much trouble.
I don't get a personal chef. Where's my personal chef for this podcast?
I would love to work on films like it was, where it was working with great people when, yes, we need trailers, we need makeup trailers, and we need great people and crew, and you need the best. But I really would rather work with the best actors and the best crew. And we need what we need, and good craft service, and treat the crew right, and feed them, and pay motion picture insurance. And but I just don't want it to be about managers and agents and lawyers and people having personal chefs and trainers. And I don't think that's what this was intended for. And so there's wonderful films out there that can be made. With wonderful artists and people doing what they love to do.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you've gotten to that point in your career where you can say no, and you do say no, and you want to, again, pick who you want to work with and on the projects you want to work with, because you know it's going to be a good experience.
Yeah.
Well, you always go in hoping that, and I think that they're kindred spirits, feel the same way, and it happens, every once in a while, but it's changed a lot, in recent years. But it used to be incredible to work with people, because you meet such incredible people that love making movies. And even television, which we used to sort of not think was so great, can be really good. And you find the right people, the right actors, and eventually you do become family, and you find people that I just want to work with them all the time.
Yeah.
And I do understand why certain people just stuck with the same people.
Sure, of course.
And sometimes at their own, to their own peril, they just worked with the same people forever. And I've done that with some actors and some people where I thought, and there are films that come up and you look at them and think, oh, I love this movie. I just love it, and I'd love to work with that person, but I know they have their own people handling the makeup and prosthetics and hair and all that stuff. So, and I'm happy for them that they have a loyalty to them, and it says a lot about them.
Yeah.
Is there something that you enjoy the most, whether it's a prosthetic or, somebody's been beat up or just making a character fit a certain era, 1940s or whatever? There's something particular in what you do that you like. I like doing it all, but what I really love to do is make somebody look like they've been through hell.
Yeah, and kind of like what do you feel like you're the strongest at? everything.
Emily Blunt sort of paid me a great compliment where she said, I'm great at making people look like shit. I really take that as a compliment because she's so beautiful and such a wonderful actress. She really is. That meant a lot to me that she said that. It did mean a lot because she's so beautiful that I think to make her look great, I don't think is such a hard thing to do. It's a high-class problem. I would say that to Daniel Craig too. It's a high-class problem to make him look good. But I've worked with such incredible people. Emily, though, like Sicario, to make her look rougher was. I love that she allowed me to do that, and yet still beautiful, but real, authentic. Meant a lot to me. It wasn't contrived, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And of course, the way, Roger and Team Deakins and Villeneuve and everybody, everything about the film for me still resonates. I feel like it's one of the best films I've ever been able to work on.
Sicario.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everything about it, the realism of it, based in reality. But then, I think it looks simple, but it wasn't.
Right.
And then other films that have a complicated makeup, I don't know, it could be The Baron or, I don't know, Dave Bautista in Dune or something.
Sure. And when you say The Baron, you're talking about Dune.
Yes, could be very difficult, which it was.
Yeah.
But it's technically handled in such a way that with a lot of prep and 16 weeks prep, but it's a very different thing. So I would say, but it's still all based in reality, which I guess is sort of what I do more of. Period films, I love watching them.
Yeah.
When I started, I did a lot of television when I was a junior and an assistant when I started in Canada, and co-productions that were British and Canadian and like Child's Christmas in Wales, and I loved working on them because I took a lot of pride in being on Anne of Green Gables and things like that. The makeups were accurate, or so I thought. But now when I watch them, I don't chase them so much because people do them better.
Yeah.
And to me, it's not original. I would rather create a world or maybe create something based on reality that's contemporary, because I think it's more difficult. And I think I like the problem solving. I like the stress of it.
Yeah.
I like taking an actor from, say, Blade Runner and make them fit that world when they maybe look too out of place.
Right.
Yeah.
Or too modern. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes on the period films, I just feel like there are people who do it so beautifully, so much better than I do. And the makeup or the hair. In the prosthetic world, there's other people who do it really brilliantly.
Yeah.
But overall, I guess that's it. Yeah.
How have you seen like the advancements of technology impact your department? Like from the first earlier films you've worked on till now, Dune 1, Dune 2. Like what have been some of the big changes you've seen?
Well, not that I think. I know that makeup probably more than just about any department. I mean, I can't speak for the camera department, cinematography, but I think apart from them, because of the changes and advancements in cinematography and digital and everything, but as far as on the floor, costume, makeup, hair, I mean, we have for sure, just more than just about any other department, been significantly changed by CG and digital changes, cinematography, going from film to digital, which I loved. I was very lucky, though, making those changes. But I don't think other departments felt it so much the way we did, and the changes we've made, just the way prosthetics have changed. Practical makeup's changed. We've come back to practical makeups. But for a long time, they were going the way of the dodo.
Can you talk a little bit about how it's changed? Like what was something that was done prior that now is? Well,
visual effects, which a deep respect, but it was becoming a little bit. Everything sort of became. They were sort of taking over. It was just, and everyone talked about VFX, and these massive teams, and people were turning up on set saying, no, don't worry about that. It's going to be a VFX. and there's always someone turns up on the set after the fact, except then you meet great people like Paul Lambert, and people on Blade Runner turned up and said, no, it'll be a merge. It's a collaborative thing. And that changed my perception. But there were makeups that people were turning up that didn't really know what I do, and I didn't know what they were doing. And suddenly it was a whole new world. And they were asking us to do some of their work, quite frankly. And, you were putting gunshot wounds on people that they would take off and vice versa. Or they were fixing things that we were doing.
Right.
So, but now we've come back to do some more practical makeups.
Because to me, that makes a lot more sense. As a filmmaker, I'd rather get it in camera right at the first time and not have to, there's always that fix it in post. Well, nobody really wants to fix it in post, and you can't fix everything in post. Nobody wants to add blood later in post or add wounds, or because it still doesn't look right.
I agree.
I always notice it. You're like, that is fake blood. Or even, like, it's supposed to be cold outside. Oh, somebody's breath, like digital breath.
Yeah.
I always see it, and it just drives me crazy. It takes me out of it. I'm like, just don't have the breath at all. Instead of fake digital cold breath, just he's wearing a jacket. I know it's cold. You know.
I think that Blade Runner 2049 was a big learning curve for that, because there was a lot of overlaps, and there was some very good things. But even on the Tom Ford film, which I loved working on because they had to do de-aging and things, was really great because it couldn't all be done in camera.
Right.
That, of course, they were going back, flashbacks and things. Look, it's a collaborative industry, and it's a creative process. And the last time I checked, it is still an art form and many disciplines involved, which some people seem to forget. And the newer people in the industry are certain areas where you think, still check in with people, and it's the respectful thing to do. But I think there are certain areas that forget. There's a way, and you can say, well, people don't do. For instance, somebody asked a question the other day on Facebook, and yes, I'm old enough that I still look at Facebook. And but until my father, who died about a year and a half ago, my father was on Facebook until he was like 86, which I thought was very funny. But somebody had asked a question on Facebook, a wonderful prosthetics man called Neil Gorton in the UK, who's got a great effects shop in Cornwall. And he's done these great makeups of the past British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And it's a wonderful makeup on Ken Branagh. It's an incredible makeup. It's been on a television show. But he was asking a question about, just to put it out there, a bruise be done with a old school grease wheel, we call it, a grease palette, or an alcohol-based palette, which is a more modern, the newer people do it with an alcohol-based makeup. And people are responding, oh, definitely alcohol-based palette. And you go, no, actually. And I always say what I think, because I'm a blunt person if you haven't met me.
Andrew and I can attest to that so far.
So I responded, well, actually, I have an opinion here. And he was going to say, well, I feel, and he said, a bruise wheel because, and he gave the reason, which is exactly what I would have said. A lot of actors don't want the alcohol-based palette because it's highly irritating
to the skin. Yeah.
Thank you. But there's a new group of people who don't really give a flying.
Yes. Yeah, we can't say that. Yes. Yes. It's flying
I would
something.
never say that.
Flying saucer.
A flying fig about the actor. See where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
They don't care. So you could have Jane Doe in your chair or John Doe, and a certain type of newer makeup artist might say, it's my job, I have to do it.
Right.
But another person like myself would be, I would never dream of doing that. So you do it, and then you might use the alcohol for different parts of the face or body. So say massive trauma, bruising. And also the bruise wheel is for people who know how to paint.
Yeah.
I said it. Quickly, you're working with Denis Villeneuve, you're working with Damien Chazelle, you're working with Tom Ford. I need it now.
Yeah.
The guy's taking his shirt off. It's unscripted. We're shooting here. We're on the side of a mountain. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. Do it. alcohol palette's not going to work for you,
Mm-hmm.
the bruise wheel. So we had this debate, but people were thought it was all very aggressive.
Seems pretty calm.
Yeah.
But I guess my point would be, that would be like, let me think to analogize this. Okay, here's one for you. Let's say take an older professional registered nurse like my mother, Flora McDonald. Very
Hi,
good
Flora.
registered nurse, did it for 50 years. They never drew blood with gloves on. They were
Yeah.
never trained to do it. Older doctors, they were never trained to do it with gloves on because it's clumsy.
Mm.
The gloves rip. You ask
Yeah.
any one of them. But to this day, go and get your blood drawn at Cedars-Sinai. See if a nurse can IV you without doing 3 attempts.
Oh. Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh my God, they'll fumble and try it. Go to an older nurse like Flora McDonald. Bam. One pop, she's got it. She's 92 and she could still do it.
So reminder, always ask for the oldest
Yeah.
nurse possible when you're getting your blood
I wouldn't
drawn.
say the older, but the idea that there's something about the older things
Mhm.
were good, and you combine it with newer things
Yeah.
for balance.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at a lot of productions and, you hear people talking about, well, I had to be there at 4 a.m, even though call time was 7 a.m. because I had 3 hours in the makeup chair.
Yeah.
People don't realize it can take
Yeah.
a long time to get ready.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it depends if you're making somebody blue and put some ears and nose and everything on it, that's going to
Yeah.
take a lot longer than, whatever
Yeah.
else you might be doing. But it's a part that, you're one of the first people on set every day because that's the first thing you have to do is go into makeup before you go,
Right.
go to set.
And last one's out.
Yeah.
It's it's a choice, right? I think people, this is something that comes up a lot, and especially right now with people very upset in the industry with labor unrest and strikes and things like that. If production people need to also maybe understand, and look, the public, people who see films, they don't need to worry about it. It's made for them to enjoy. They don't need to know what time we went into work.
Yeah.
Right.
Just need to know what time to get to the theater.
Yeah.
But I do think more people in film production, not just at the top, but I think everybody need to know the people that are picking people up,
Mm-hmm.
the people that heat the vans and start the trailers, and
Yeah.
I think need to understand how hard people work and what time they come in, the people that do the food. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
There's a lot missing in the business that has to be I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, almost a re-education or a new education, and it's always been part of the challenge for years in any area where you're trying to get a film incentive going. The politicians,
Sure.
they'll say, "Oh, it's just Hollywood handouts." It's like, no, this is a very blue collar job. These people get to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. They're working 12, 14-hour days, sometimes longer. Have you ever seen a grip at the end of a day? They are covered in sweat. They just want to drink Gatorade all day long to try and stay hydrated. This is hard work for a lot of these people, and people have this perception it's just whoever's in front of the camera and somebody lounging in a director's chair yelling at people to to move around when there is a lot of hard work involved.
I think it's the conditions are. There are times it makes me it makes me angry actually, because there's no need for it, and because people love what they do, and they really do. When I think back, it's you go back and think of films that we had some wonderful experiences and made great films, or you see it occasionally you look at TV, you're on location or you're traveling and you flip a movie on and you go, God, I remember that, it was fun. And there are other times you go, no, that was not fun.
Yeah.
Okay, what can you tell us? What were some of your most fun experiences?
Yeah, what were the good times?
Talk about the good times.
Can we talk about some bad times?
You
too?
can absolutely.
And then we'll end on the lighter note.
Let's tell us the good ones first, and then you can say whatever you want about the bad ones.
There were mostly good ones. There were
Good.
things that were fun, people that were funny and fun, and let me see. Oh my God, the early years, you know, when you're young and you're so.
You almost have too many credits to list.
Yeah.
I reminisced recently because we were
I'll remind
talking
you.
about The Fly, because I was such a kid.
The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, or yeah,
Yeah.
And I reminisced with Howard Berger, who's, you know, one of our governors from the Academy. He's, you know, he's written this book, Makeup Masters, and it's really an interesting book. He did the first book, and so somehow it came up about The Fly, and I found a photograph. Somebody found it for me, and I don't know, I was 20 years old. I was such a kid. And there I am looking like I really know what I'm doing. I'm sitting there. I love there's a pack of cigarettes on the table. That's my favorite part of the picture. A pack of cigarettes. Me, skinny like this, painting the head piece that goes on Jeff Goldblum. I look like a pro. And there's another photograph of the three of us. Amazing Stéphane Dupuis. Unbelievably talented. Margaret Becerra, best prosthetics painter I've ever known in my life. She also did Beauty and the Beast for Rick Baker. Unbelievably talented. She was one of the first few women as a prosthetics artist. And yours truly. I did the hands and the feet. I was the junior assistant.
for The Fly. Yeah,
Wow.
that's great.
Margaret's doing her thing. Stéphane. I nearly got sacked 3 times. Oh my God. So when I look back and go, look at me. But they left me on the set with him. But I was very junior, and it probably would never happen today. And it was a different time. It was 85. But reminiscing now about it, you think, God, I was so lucky.
Yeah.
Because that's a classic now.
Oh, yeah.
To look back, and
Yeah.
it's quite operatic, isn't it? And it was scary. And Cronenberg was terrifying. He's actually a nice man and made beautiful films.
That's good to know that David Cronenberg's a nice man.
I mean, they made an opera
Yeah.
years later in Paris.
Well, and what a change from the original Fly from like the 1950s. I remember, seeing that black and white version as a kid and everything. And then when the new Fly came out, it was like blew your mind as, the
Absolutely.
sort of the update
Yeah.
that happened.
So at the time, it was for me, was horrific. Okay. But people laugh about it now. Okay, so what I did was I'm standing on the set. I was the kid. So nobody wanted to be on the set all day. It was horrific. Smoke everywhere. People smoking on set. Mark Irwin was the DP, who was so lovely. It's when people shouted all the time on the set, hurry up, makeup. And no one wanted to go to the set with Jeff. It was 5 hours of makeup, then shooting day, and then hours to clean them up. So they packed a bag for me and said, off you go now. Like a kid.
Yeah.
Packed the bag for me, but I knew what to do. And back then it was foam.
Yeah.
The suit was made of foam. The head was made of foam, the face. Hair pieces made by Bob Kelly. Okay, now off you. Me by myself. Today you'd have 2 people on set, maybe 3 on that makeup, by the way. I have the camera bag. It was a camera case I had to take to the set. No chair, no nothing. Now everyone would have a chair. I take this case, and they said, just stand there, all day. Okay? And wait till they call makeup. They kept calling me Donnie, by the way. And I kept saying, my name's Donald. And a first AD called, I'm going to shame him. He's passed away, so I won't. Okay.
Well, if his worst crime is calling you Donnie, then.
So, Donnie. He thought he was being nice. And
Yeah.
I kept saying, my name's Donald. And then David Cronenberg said, what's your name? So there I was, 20 or 21 years of age. Okay. He had to be sprayed with water and then KY jelly put all over the suit. That was embarrassing enough because
Yeah.
people kept making comments.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I had like 10 tubes of KY jelly, and then you have to spray him with this stuff. Okay. I'll be faster telling this story because
No, I love
That's
it.
okay. No, I love the detail.
so there I am. It was a very late night. It was very hot on the set, and Jeff was in his thing, doing the fly sounds. He did a thing, and it freaked me out a little bit. And Jenna Davis was very nice to me, and he kept doing this weird. And I'm like, what the?
Head to YouTube to watch the video version of our podcast to see Donald right now.
And I thought, oh, he's really messing with me. But I knew actors and I understood what he was doing. Okay, I said, now, Jeff, I'm going to spray you now and do the thing. So I got all the KY and there was a spray bottle, my spray bottle. But then standing this distance away was the prop master, one of the best ever, Mark Corriveau, one of the best ever in the industry. He was there and he was spraying, I don't know what he was spraying, something. And my bottle was here and his was there. And I would spray Jeff, KY, touched him up here because the paint kept coming off under his arms around the crotch area, because every once in a while if he had to go to the bathroom, I had to unrelease the glue and then repaint it, let him go to the bathroom, come back. Okay, so this happens. He comes back, spray, spray, spray. He makes the funny fly sounds. Called me over, called me lamb. I remember this. Oh, my lamb. That's the thing. I spray him, get the KY. People make rude comments. So I do the thing. And then they say, hurry up, makeup, Donnie. And it was this. And I'm like, oh, no, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And the set was tense and it was a big scene. And I grabbed Mark Corriveau's bottle.
Oh.
And I sprayed Jeff top to bottom. And I went, what the And Jeff went, what is that? I sprayed him with vinegar.
Oh. Top to bottom, covered in vinegar.
So advice to the younger folks,
And
check the labels
it
on
was
the bottle.
bad.
Yeah.
Because that combined with all the sweat.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we had a lot of shooting to go.
Oh, no.
And so that night, I got in so much trouble. I had to stay up all night and wash that foam suit
Oh, yeah.
in ivory soap, dish soap, in a bathtub. That suit was heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By myself, I got shouted at. Today, well, they HR you for everything. But I mean, we didn't have HR. And I had to take it into somebody's dressing room and soak it in a tub.
Yeah.
I stayed up all night and I had to wash it, like hand wash it.
Oh.
He said, I smell like a salad. The whole set was stinking.
I'm a salad.
That's that.
Wait, this was the good experience, right? Or the good memory or the bad memory?
Well, now it's
funny now.
It's funny now. It wasn't then.
Funny,
That's
haha,
it.
or
Funny how.
That's it.
Funny how.
Yeah.
like a clown.
People think it's hysterical. At the time, it was just devastating.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Because like you said, it is high pressure when you're in the middle of shooting, and I was going to say, the vinegar didn't react where it started dissolving anything, fortunately, because that would have been obviously a real nightmare. It was just the smell.
Yeah, and I think the pressure overall. But that's, the kind of thing that used to happen. Now I don't know now we just don't get left like that. You don't
Yeah.
have one person. But it was a different time.
What was the prop guy using the vinegar for?
I think he was cleaning something.
Uh,
I think he was cleaning the KY off either the flooring or one of the sets, because
Right.
it's one he was going into. I think it was that thing he went into with the baboon. I can't remember. So long ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story, though.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you know
awesome.
what? Tell us a little bit about, you've become really involved working with students
Yeah.
in the last several years, whether it's through BAFTA or the Motion Picture Academy doing some things. Talk about a little bit about your work with students and sort of what your passion is in that area.
Well, sometimes I think that when I'm dissatisfied with what I end up with crew, I think I need to train my own people, and then that's one reason. And then it doesn't work out because it's very hard to get the crew you want, especially when you work on location.
Yeah.
You often have to get what you get. And I guess I have this idealistic ideal of I don't know what it is, of there's another part of me that really what it comes down to is I never had anybody in the business. I didn't know anyone. I had nobody in show business. And I think that the fact that I love film so much, and when I hear about kids and young people who want to be in a creative industry and would love to learn and want to meet people, I think it's kind of our duty. It's I think our responsibility to somehow share that because it's been given to me. And I had people like Beryl who helped me, and people over the years. There was a costume designer I knew as a very young person, Peter de Castel, Stéphane Dupuis, to hire me on the fly. I mean, honestly, at my age, knowing so little, and I got paid to do it. It's not like that anymore because people don't. Mentoring people is different because we don't really have an apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very difficult with insurance and all kinds of problems and HR, and it's just so difficult that if it's done outside, I think it can be handled in a very different way, very professionally and respectfully. On a work environment, it's very difficult now. And I think working with young people is very difficult in a work environment because of the pressure for them, as I've experienced. But I think through what BAFTA is doing particularly, the Academy have some great programs too, Academy Gold and things like that. But with BAFTA in LA, they've got programs like Vance Bird that I had a great experience going into Washington Prep High School and John F. Kennedy because the kids are interested in everything from editing, cinematography, sound, makeup, costume. So you can work with the kids and it teams them up with people like me, or I get them to other people with expertise and disciplines. And you learn a lot about yourself, actually. So it's kind of selfish because you learn about yourself in as much as you can help young people. And there's people, I've got a guy called Ivan Hernandez who's, 24. I've got him on his first couple of paid jobs.
Nice.
We got him into a school where we could help him a little bit with the tuition.
Amazing.
We've got him some union hours now. It's not about privilege because I think people with a lot of privilege and the finances don't need my help. They'll get that help because if you go to the AFI or you go to UCLA, or you're going to meet those people.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then you need some help. So when those kids needed iPads, I called James and Roger, and James said, we've got all those iPads. Or I need extra makeup supplies for kids. I can call up Nigel Beauty and say, hey, do you guys have something? And because they always want blood and theatrical makeup. And so I really enjoy it because at the end of a film, I always have stuff. And I've given it to a lot of people that work with me, but I think you don't really need it. And so it's been great. So young filmmakers who are making their first movie will call me and I'll say, I'll help you, but here's my deal.
Right.
You hire some of these kids and I'll help you with your movie.
Wow.
That's my deal.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's it.
And that's such a good way to do it because that is one of the challenges is no matter where you're at in the country, as the filmmaking industry spreads out to all these different states with different incentive programs, and so the love of the business is getting spread around.
That's right.
But you don't have the people in all of those areas that are able to do the job. And so any way that you can mentor and, bring people up is always amazing.
If there's a film, we could come here. We could do,
We'll find one. We'll make something
the
happen.
Dallas Film Commission.
We'll call you.
We can, but this is, there's a way to do it because I think right now I'm looking at things where I think, people sit back and go, well, how do we do it? How do we do it? And there is a way because you look at films that turn up and you go, how did that get made? And I'm a hopeful person. I think that we have to believe. And I think of performers like Tantu Cardinal, who's in Scorsese's new film, and think she's, an indigenous performer. I think she's been in 140 films.
Oh,
we
wow.
need to double check. We need to check. But it's something because she's getting some special award in Canada. She's been in 140 movies.
Wow.
It's staggering. But you go, how? But how do you get something made? And we used to have a way, but now it's the same 4 actors and everything. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
no, it's true.
It's kind of, so I think that's what you do as an incentive to say, well, then you need to train X amount of people. So somebody comes in and consults on the film and hire these people. So I've enjoyed it at BAFTA. I think it's something they do beautifully because, how many awards can you give to people?
Right.
Yeah.
And they get it. So, we've had a great turnout of people who've come in. I've had first ADs come, hairstylists, makeup now, a couple of different makeup people, costume, down to things like, AD, all kinds of people trying to get Paul Lambert and visual effects to come. That for me, it's also that kids need to understand it's more than just being a director and a movie star.
Yes.
Yes.
And we all know that's the same, any country, any city you go to, all kids talk about is like the most famous 2 or 3 people they hear about.
Right.
But, you know, there's a shortage of props people.
Yeah.
We have a huge shortage of hairstylists. Like in the next couple of years, in the union world, nobody doing hair.
Production design as well.
Props is a huge shortage.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. It's a mule's job. That's a heavy, tough, working, like you said, blue-collar job. They got to haul all that equipment, but there's people who want to do that. And it's a good paying job. Makeup is never a shortage. People always want to do it. We're seeing a big shift in makeup of, very interesting, women predominantly all want to do prosthetics now.
Interesting.
Which is great, but we have almost no men coming into makeup, just basic makeup now.
Well, and it's so funny because you said when you got started, it was all men, no women, and now it's all women,
no men.
No men.
It's made a complete shift. It's perception. It's just perception, because in Hollywood, typically through the women weren't doing makeup until the 80s. London was the same. So it's just perception, and the imbalance now is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Of what's happening. So, and as far as like diversity and inclusion, it's kind of taking some strange turns. And so I really like working with lots of different kids, young people. I shouldn't say kids, but young people who cover a lot of territory.
Right.
So for the younger people that you're working with, that you're seeing that wow, they could do really good in this department. Like, what qualities or traits are you seeing in them that kind of like speak to you?
Well, there's one young woman right now who's kind of really caught me by surprise, because I did a demo at JFK High School, and she's going off to college in North Carolina. There's a young man who's going to Berkeley, like super bright. I've sort of said, you guys have to finish. You've got to do that, because that's something I learned from the late, great Shirley Douglas, is that all people, all kids, regardless, if they're in school, I need to encourage they finish.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. More for their families, especially I think for people who are not independently well off. Or for their own reasons, more for their families, and culturally I think it's important, because I think the families are disappointed if they don't. And it's irresponsible.
Yeah.
Especially right now, you know, because there's a lot of jobs you can't get if you don't have those certain diplomas and qualifications. And this one young woman, though, I did a demo. It was a very simple demo, like what we'll do tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's quite simple, but it's like a makeup that would go, let's say the Paul Dano makeup that has like 4 stages or 3. So it's step 1 and 2. And she was watching me. She was 17 years old. And she got right next to me. And these are kids who are all studying film and TV, and they're in their final year of high school. And I started, and I was getting to do blood and stuff like that. And she got right in, and I said, now I'm going to do, and she grabbed something. And I said, oh, do you want to hold that for me? And she said, oh, are you going to do this? And I go, uh-huh. And then what about that? And I said, what would you do next? And she knew. She said, well, I would this. And I said, why don't you do that? And she did it. And I went, oh, she knows something.
Yeah.
And I thought, she's a natural. The fact that she knew I could train her.
Had she studied it before, or was it just in somehow innate that she was just like, well, this makes sense to me, and so she just had this, you know.
She was watching me. She's watched films.
Yeah.
She's read a few things. She's interested in movies that have some makeup effects. And so right away I thought, and then she did something. I said, oh, why don't you try this here, and I'll do this.
Yeah.
And she did it, and she knew, like, she was better than beginner. And I thought, okay, so do you want to come and do this with me? So we invited her to a makeup effects shop.
Yeah.
With 2 other kids, and they were making a baby, a small silicone baby. And I said, do you know how much that costs? And she said, no. And I said, about $75,000. And I said, do you know that, would you be interested in learning how to make something like that? Like how to build it and paint it? Like, she was really interested. So I thought if you were able to do that, I mean, you could make a living.
Yeah.
See, the idea that she could make a living painting, it's fine art.
Right.
And then she saw all the people in the back of this shop. There was like 20 people that were painting and sculpting and doing wig making in a shop in Van Nuys in LA, like in the Valley, that were doing fine art in a shop. It was like, you could be doing this, making a living. And I think she found that very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's a big part of it is people don't realize what you can actually do to have a job and make a living in the industry. It's all, we're just blinders on, directing and acting and the producing, and that's it.
That's
and,
right.
And you don't realize the 100 other jobs
That's
on
right.
set.
And she came the other day to see when we brought my friend Camille Friend, who's going to do this job with me, and she had done such a great job with the hair in Black Panther, Wakanda, and she worked with me 25 years ago, and we talked about textured hair and black hair and the history of it, and she was fascinated. And I think people and all these kids, boys and girls, from all over LA, were just fascinated by the jobs that are available. That no one ever talks about. It was the same for me, but I went to a very different school.
Yeah.
That I sort of went back to kind of Miss Borden at like where I went to West Hill High School, where she didn't know what to do with me. And she didn't have any clue, like, where's she going to send me? She thought I should do history of art because I was interested in painting.
Right.
So it's the same thing, but kids need someone who's got this sort of interest. And so now I think that would be great. She finishes school, gets her degree, and then we get her into a shop a couple days a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and it's good that, you were able to recognize that and then encourage her and give her that opportunity to be able to, you're just giving her that nudge, that little push.
Yeah.
Hey, look at this over here. Look what you can do.
Yeah. Experience is experience.
Yeah.
And it's the balance of both. And I think we should have more of that at work and on set. We try, but it's just very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, before we wrap up, you said there were projects you didn't like working on. I know we're going to have to wait for your tell-all book one day to tell us all the stuff that you don't like. The cities that in the world that you don't like to travel to anymore.
Well, the thing is, films that are usually no fun to work on are the best films.
Oh, yeah?
So what I've always said is that certain films are masterpieces.
Yeah.
And the films that were a lot of fun, I can leave it at that. The films that were a lot of fun were they were just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why, is something...
Because you just know.
Yeah.
You just sort of go, look, we're all here. We're doing this. It is what it is. But when, you're working really, really hard, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that a film a year or two ago was not fun because it was just 24/7, 7 days a week. It's this. But other films are tremendous amount of fun because it is what it is, right? And it's great to travel and it's great to see the world and you do meet a core group of people that you'll be friends with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
That's
what it is.
Yeah, that's the great thing about a film set. You do have, your film family, and even though it's so much hard work, you reach a point then when it's over, even though it's hard work, you miss it, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to see any of you now for for however long. We just spent 30 days working together and seeing you every day, 12 hours a day, and now I'm not going to see you at all. And it's almost that people go into that little depressive mode when that ends. So, but that's not how we're going to be here as we wrap up the podcast, because we're going to see you for another day and a half here before
we'll have to do a part 2 to this.
Absolutely.
Episode.
Well, Donald, thank you so much for coming on the Dallas Film Podcast. Anything you'd like to say as we wrap up?
Thanks for having me. I'll meet some people in Dallas and come back and see them, and we'll meet some young students.
Absolutely.
And, cinephiles and film lovers and filmmakers.
And we'll have a round 2.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode. And we can't wait for the next one. So please keep listening. And thanks again.